Sweet Jesus, taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is far sweeter because Jesus can do an awful lot of things that ice cream can't. Ice cream can help get you through some tough times, but Jesus can get you through the toughest of times. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. I got a friend in. Bay Ames is here. He is a member at Open Arms, our church. He is an elder. He's an all-around great guy. And he's been through some grief. And it's this time of year where a lot of people are, their sense of awareness of this grief, the loss that they've experienced in their lives tends to come to the surface. It's a time of year for family and friends and being with those that are close to you. And that can open up old wounds. It can not be as exciting for some as it is for others. Sometimes it's a little bit of a mixed bag. There's some great things, and then there's still also these empty spaces and empty chairs. And Bay and I were talking a little bit about that on Sunday afternoon, and I shot him a text later on and said, hey, you want to talk about this? And he said, yeah. So it didn't really take a whole lot of convincing. I didn't even have to tell him about the ice cream until after.
Good stuff.
He had already said yes. So speaking of ice cream, pull up some ice cream, get some Christmas crack. Actually, Bay came bearing gifts today, too, from his wife, Terry. I already munched on some of that. I probably shouldn't have, but I'm going to save that for the family so that they get to taste some, too. For now, I've got Peanut Butter Party. This is my second time in a row I'm going after the Peanut Butter Party ice cream from Blue Bunny. Blue Bunny's actually pretty good. It's not maybe the most popular brand, but they got some good flavors. You have Bluebell, though.
I do. I like my Parlings and cream. Good stuff.
Nice. That was my wife. It's my wife's favorite, too, so enjoy it, but you can't enjoy all of it. I got to get her in here, too, and that was the point. But Heather, shout out to you. You got to get in here. We got to do a podcast. But until then, we've got Bay here. And Bay is married, as I mentioned, to Terry. But before that, Bay was married to Debbie, right? Yeah. And she died at some point. You'll give us the timeline here a little bit. But that's tough. Losing a spouse is tough. And that's what we're here to talk about. But as we start out every time, I got to ask you the question, what's so sweet about Jesus, Bay? I got to get into this ice cream. So
all right. I'll start talking about Jesus.
That's what we're here for.
All right. Now, he's been with me my whole life. I didn't formally ask him into my heart until I was 27, but I knew he was out there as a kid because I'd prayed to him on and off. He answered prayer. And as I started out, I went through normal high school, that sort of thing. I ended up in the Navy, and that's where I met Deb, and so I was gonna go there. So Jesus was in my heart at the time, but I just didn't know how well he was taking care of me, and because over and over again things would come out the right way, and it wasn't any of my doing, and I put that on him.
That's not a bad approach.
I got to do that. My first wife, Deb, was a wonderful lady. I met her in between cruises. I was doing Vietnam thing, and I came back for a large turnaround period, which was about 15 months. And I met her, settled down. We were both very young, and got married, had kids. She had a great family. I felt at home there. I felt the presence of Jesus on me, but I wasn't always following his way. I was kind of a crazy kid back in those days, and my new wife put up with me. And so I was very thankful for that. And we raised two children, two girls. I continued my Navy career, and she was an enabler. as in she would help me along with things. She encouraged me to go to school. I joined the Navy with a high school diploma, and I came out of the Navy with a bachelor's degree. And that kicked off my IT career as I went into 40 and above. But my kids were good kids. I had two girls. They have their children now, that sort of thing. But Deb and I got along. We were growing back together again as our kids left home, and we're raising families of their own, and we're becoming each other's best friends. At that point, she became ill. She started having back problems and other issues. At the time, we did not fully understand why. They've got names for the stuff that she had wrong back in those days, but we didn't know what it was. And so I found myself taking care of her, and one thing led to another, and we were married 30 years. And I went to work one morning, and she would come out. She'd always walk out to the edge of the garage and close the garage door as I left. And something just really weird had happened. I mean, she didn't close the garage door. She just stood there. So I was in the vehicle, and I pulled the vehicle back up, got out, walked up to her, and I felt like our souls were talking to each other. I don't know how to explain that. It was just I looked in her eyes, she looked in my eyes. No words were spoken. And I turned around, I got back in the vehicle, and I left. She passed away about noon that day. I found her passed away when I got home. I felt something about noontime, and went home. That's when I found her, called 911. And it's probably one of the worst days of my life. We were both... we both knew Jesus at that point. We'd been going to a church. I won't mention the name of the church, but it was local here in Slidell, and we felt good there. We had family. We had family friends. A couple friends, and we would do things. We got involved with during the holidays, that sort of thing, and all of a sudden it was gone. It was gone. I didn't know what to do with myself. My girls at that point each had a child of their own. So she saw her first two grandchildren. We'd been married 30 years at that point, and I was 52 years old. And I just kind of felt like my world had ended. It was the neighbors came over to help. The church came over and brought meals and that sort of thing. As I was going through this. And there was a lot of help there, but at the end of the day, when everybody had gone, I was by myself, and that was hard to deal with. That was real hard to deal with. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm a guy, so I'm not supposed to cry, but I did, and you can't get away from that. I find myself leaning on Jesus and talking to him a lot, asking the why question. I understood that she was gone, and I'd watched her deteriorate, for probably 18 months before that is when it all started. And a lot of ups and downs, a lot of in and out of the hospital, that sort of thing. And, it's just every now and then, you think about what would I do if you lost your spouse? And you never think about serious because you really can't go anywhere with that. You think, well, I'll do, and your mind goes blank because there's nothing you'd really rather do than be with them. That's
you don't want to actually think about having to do that.
It's exactly right. And of course, my kids just lost their mom, and they had, for their first child. Both of them got 3 kids of their own now. But at the time, they just had one, and so they were just learning how to raise their own kids. And that's when they need their mom, And so that was missing. So it was real hard. It was a fell in the valley type thing. I went back to my church looking for friends. I found the next hard step was the fact all the married friends you have are no longer friends because you're the odd guy out. It's almost like you showed up without a date, And I did not expect that. I did not expect that at all. And so I went into the singles part of the church, and I wasn't one of them. I just I wasn't a single person looking for somebody. I wasn't a single person that felt hopeless because I felt like I had everything I needed, but it was gone.
Mm.
It's just like the rug got pulled out from underneath you. So it's very, very difficult back in those days. The days were long. I had a job, so I wrapped myself up into work as much as I could, and it was a kind of a tough environment. And as I was starting to get things back together, I found out where I could get dinner. I found back in those days Piccadilly's. They're gone now, but they always had something good. It was kind of inexpensive, so I found I'd go to work and stop by there, and that was my daily eat out type thing. And come home and I didn't have any dishes to do. I like that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm cleaning up the place, right? That's my mess now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because she was very much the typical housewife of the back of the years ago, as in she took care of me and the kids. The house was always clean. Dinner was always on the table. She was always by my side wherever I went. And now that was gone, I guess the double whammy is my kids were trying to do for themselves, and they were actually moved in and out of the area. Jobs are kind of, coming and going back then. So they started leaning on their aunts. Deb had 4 sisters. She came from a family of 7 kids, two boys and five girls. And so the girls fell back on their aunts for the motherly, girly stuff they needed to know about raising their kids. And so I felt even further out in the cold on that.
Mm.
I couldn't figure out why they did that, but it made sense. They're better at telling them how to change diapers than I was.
Mm.
And I was a typical guy, but that was hard. And then as I started evening things out, going to work, and my hobbies weren't the same anymore because I used to fly remote control aircraft, and what I liked about that it was detailed. I'd build my airplanes, I'd go out on the weekends and fly them, and that sort of thing. But she was involved with that, so I found that I couldn't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so they went in the attic, and they're actually still in the attic, believe it or not. And they're not flyable anymore, but they're up there as a reminder to me. It wasn't too long after that. That was in 1970. I don't know. That was in 2002, and a little less than a year later, my mom died. Mm. My mom was close to Deb also, and she helped me out quite a bit. But she was in her 80s at that point, and she passed of natural causes, and so that threw me further into a hole. My joy for life wasn't there. I lost it. My wife. I basically lost my church. Because I didn't know the people I needed to know back then. I found myself kind of separated. My mom, who I was close with, was I was tight with her, but then she passed, and I was slowly adapting the best I could, and I had a pet dog, and his name was Duke, and I'd take him. He and I would go out for walks, and I'd get home from work and throw a leash on him, and off we'd go. He was my best friend, and so I got to know my neighbors. I was talking to them. I was taking the same route every day, that sort of thing. And I ran into this one gal. She lived a block over from me, and we had a lot in common, but I didn't know just how much. And she was a nice lady. Turned out she knew Deb. My kids knew her, and she had something she was trying to get in and out of her car. And she's a little lady, so I went over and gave her a hand and introduced myself and talked to her a little bit, and that was the end of that, and I walked off. A couple of days later, I make the same path. My dog's got me on a habit, and I run into her again. And so she and I slowly became friends, as in, hi, how you doing? And stop and talk a little bit and got to know each other a little bit, and months went by, and as she asked me, she said, "Hey, look, there's a bunch of us that get together in the diner down here in Slidell." And she says, "We get together. We're a bunch of losers. we get together and complain about the week." She said, "You'd fit right in."
So, gee, thanks.
Exactly. So, well, okay. So I went, and sure enough, those losers turned out to be a pretty good bunch of people. It wasn't a hookup type thing, although you could tell they were all kind of looking around, right? But it wasn't happening between anybody in that group. And in fact, one of those people from that group are still friends. In fact, went out to eat with them. They were down last night, and her name happens to be Deb. She's a nice lady. But so she's part of my history too, then as friendship goes. And so Terry and I kind of started doing things together. She had a friend. His name was Chuck. We're still friends also. It was a new environment. I on a hobby point, I used to like to ride motorcycles. I'm a mechanical type guy. And so he rode. He was a mechanical, hands-on type guy, but he came from a different arena. He started out in IT, went into microwave repair type stuff, and ended up, he works down at a casino now doing surveillance stuff, but he went in there as an IT guy. And he was part of Terry's support system. Terry came from a divorce, as a kind of a nasty divorce. And, it's there's you find widowed people tend to look at being single different than divorced people, and one's bitter. I came out of what I considered a very good marriage. I was very happy being married, and I was treated good in my marriage, and I felt like I reciprocated the same way back, and I didn't think that could ever be matched again. That part of my life was over, and I was looking for something. As I was going down the road, I didn't know where it was going to go. I wasn't looking for another person per se at that point, because I didn't see how she could be replaced. And so I want to say I'd met her. We'd talked a little bit. We'd go out and eat every now and then, that sort of thing. And we started slowly building a relationship. And then I met her family, that kind of stuff. We were getting closer. Most of her friends were pretty nice people. In fact, all of them were. I shouldn't say most. All of them were. I'm trying to think of exceptions, but I can't, so I won't. And so that worked out pretty good. So I was building back something here. And so I started, as I got closer to her, I started putting more pressure on her from a personal point of view, as in, where do you go to church? If I'm going to hang with somebody a little bit and talk to her, I would, because she talked about Jesus, and she seemed to be walking the walk. Okay, where's your church at? And she says, well, some Sundays I go over here and some Sundays I go over there. And so most Sundays she was in some church. I said, are you actually a member of a church? let's get a little closer, because let's focus this down a little further. And it turned out she was a member of Bethany. And I said, I didn't know anything about Bethany at the time. I said, do they love Jesus? Is that the center of the church? And she says, yeah. I said, well, let's go see what it's like then. And so I did. And I showed up here in a coat and tie, and I was the only one in a tie. And I thought, well, I kind of like this. So I told her, I said, look, if we're gonna start hanging together more, I said, start going to church. Let's pick a church. If this is your church, I'm good with it. I like the people here. I like the no tie thing, and I wore a tie to work. I was a suit and tie type guy for my career at that point, and I always I felt more comfortable in my Levi's and that sort of thing. I'm a relaxed and more down to earth type guy. So I liked what I saw. So we started coming to Bethany, and it was before it became Open Arms, and obviously the same same place. I talk to the same people, and I'm really enjoying it. I found my home. I found my new church home, and so that worked out real well. But then down the line now, I'm starting to feel better. Then I lost my dad. My dad passed, and Terry and I hadn't really talked about marriage too much at that point. It was more of just getting along good and strong friendship and that sort of thing. And my dad passed away, and let's see, how did that go? That's back. I guess we were a little stronger than that. We were stronger because I remember. In fact, I was my interest in Terry had really picked up, and we were, I guess, thinking about things. And I was out. I'm from San Diego initially. That's where my in-laws were, and I hadn't seen them in a while. But my work had me traveling quite a bit, and I found myself out there. So I went and found my old father-in-law, and Dave was his name. Nice guy, and I stopped by, and when I first married Deb, I talked to him right off the bat and asked for his daughter's hand. So I went back to him, and he's widowed himself. His wife had died some 15 years before that, Rita. And I asked Dave, I said, look, I'm looking for advice here. And I said, the advice is I married your daughter, and I really loved her. I liked it, but I'm ready to move on. And I'm thinking about another girl. How do you feel about that? I went to him for advice.
Wow.
And one of Deb's sisters was there at the time I was talking to him, and her eyes got big, and it's like, what are you doing here?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? Yeah. And Dave said, yeah. He says, I don't care how old you get or how long you've been separated. At 2:00 in the morning, it's a lonely place. It's a lonely place. If you've got a way to move forward, he said, do it. He said, if I could have, I would have. And I thanked him, and that was probably one of my last conversations with him. He passed very shortly after that. He was in his late 80s, and so it was a natural thing for him. But so at that point, I started getting I thought I was getting more serious with Terry. Then my dad died. I was getting ahead of myself. Then my dad died. And that put me in a big funk, a big depression. And I broke it off with Terry at that point. We made a trip up to visit her family. I was meeting them, that sort of thing. And I snapped. I went into a depression type thing. And I didn't want to see her anymore. I told her that. I said, I just need to be left alone. I crawled back into my shell is what I did. And it was hard. It was real hard. I was still in the house where I raised my kids, and Deb had walked the hallways and stuff. And I was just having a hard time with that. And that was around Christmas time, so that made it even harder. My kids were in and out. I didn't get to see them daily. They were living in different states at that time. And so I was kind of on my own, and so it was a pretty dark place, and I was still working, but I was getting to the point where I didn't know if I wanted to continue to work. I'm retired Navy, and with that comes my retirement check with that, and I was at a financial point where if I wanted to, I could just stop working, and I wouldn't have a lot, but I didn't need a lot. I wasn't one of those people. And so I was actually considering just dropping out of the workforce. And so that went that way for, I don't know, a month and a half or so. And I come out to my truck in the morning. I was going to go work that day, and it was Valentine's Day. And there's something stuck on my windshield. What is this? I'm not blocking anybody in or anything here. Who's going to leave me a note, And so I went and I found a Valentine's card from Terry, and it was like that was the hammer that broke the shell that was around me. That somebody still cares, I didn't feel like anybody really cared. And so she called me. I didn't call her. She called me. Said, "You okay? I haven't heard anything from you. I know, yada yada yada. You know." I said, "Yeah, well, you know." She says, "Well," so next thing I know, we got together for dinner and started picking the relationship back up again. But that's what it took. It took her coming after me. I don't know what kind of hole I would have gone into. I didn't feel suicidal, but I didn't really have a desire to live. You know, I just lost that. I just lost my desire to get up to go to work. I lost my desire to do things that I used to enjoy doing. And she made a pest of herself for the next week or so. I think she sensed that. And so we picked up the relationship. It was a growing thing for her and I both. I was still in the house where my family and everything was, and for a guy that never took care of the house, the place was spotless, right? I mean, that's all I did was clean the house. I had my dog, and I went to work and that kind of stuff. The rest of that, there's a lot of time left over. That's all there is you got to do. And so she came. She came by and started making a pest of herself again, and we started going out, and I enjoyed it. The girl is fun to be around, and she's still that way today. And we've been married 15 years now, and this was pre-Katrina, and so we decided to go ahead and get married, and if we were going to go forward. She had some trust issues to get through with her because of her ex. And like I said, there's the difference between losing someone from death. I left a good marriage. I felt like I trusted people. You know, I didn't feel a distrust. To where she came out of a kind of a nasty divorce, and I think a lot of them end up that way, where they're arguing and that sort of thing. She didn't know if she could trust me or not. And I said, that's something you're going to have to figure out yourself. I'm a one-woman guy. I've always been that way. If I lock into you, you're stuck. Because this is where I go when I'm happy, when I'm mad. This is it. That's how I work. And so she took the leap of faith and said, I do. And I had to propose to her twice. Can you believe that? The first time wasn't good enough.
Well, she did have to become a pest, like you said.
Yeah, she did. She did. And first time around, I got down on my knees, and she says, "No, I'm looking for flowers and champagne or wine or something. Come on." I said, really?
Good for her.
So I scratched my head and I laughed. I thought, okay. And so that's what we did. I did. I set up. I set it up, and I don't know, it was wine or something. It was some bubbly I had, and flowers, and got down on my knees and did the ring thing, and she accepted me that time.
Okay.
So she set the standard. She set the bar.
Take notes out there, guys. Getting down on a knee ain't enough.
It wasn't enough. She's expecting more out of me than that, and that worked out pretty good. Then we started looking at we need to find another house. She didn't want to get married and come into the house where Deb had been, because I could still see Deb walking and my kids walking those hallways, and so we decided to build. And that was in 2004, and we started the build, and the house was about 3/4 done, and it was running behind schedule. I was doing a lot of traveling with work at that time, and of course she's working. She works a lot, and the builder, he'd promised one thing, then he wouldn't deliver it. He'd promise and he wouldn't deliver it. It's just one thing after another. So we got to the 1 year mark, and Katrina hit, and I took it. The house was 3/4 done. I took a pine tree across the roof, and that was tough. And so the people I worked for was kind enough to give me enough time to start putting my house back together to get through Katrina. I I had a team of people that worked for me at the time, and I had a district type job, and so I had to keep track of them. I had to evacuate in order to keep the communication lines open, and so it was a busy time. We took care of the data networks for the Navy and the Marine Corps down here in the area, and so I had to get them back in here and that sort of thing. Well, as that settled in, I got back into the house and that sort of thing. There wasn't anybody to help us with the house. All the contractors were out, making big bucks, building houses and doing stuff. And so she kicked in. She kicked in, and she gave me a hand holding boards and stuff. And I started nailing stuff up, patched the hole on the roof and that sort of thing. We got people in there to re-roof it. And she was a trooper. I got more work out of her than I ever expected, and but she was there and it had a good sense of humor about it. The Red Cross would come by; they had their trucks coming by. That was our dinner for a lot of nights. They'd come by the house and stop, and they have bag lunches and stuff, and we continue working. But I guess where I'm headed with all this is it worked out. We got married. We looked. We're at different venues and stuff, and we ended up doing it on a cruise ship, and did it down here on the here in New Orleans. We said one of those 1 week cruise things. We got married, and they threw everybody off when the booze was gone, and dropped them in the French Quarter, and out we went. And so life's been pretty good ever since. I still regress back. I'll have to admit, that's part of your life that never goes away. I do feel like I've lived two different lives because of it. Both women were a lot alike, and both of them were enablers. They tend to push you whatever you want to do, and help you. They're both upbeat. Terry is not Deb by any means. Excuse me. You're right about that ice cream. And,
we're going to have to get you some more, by the way, because yours is turning into a soup.
Oh, man. I'm getting wrapped up here. So
don't rush it. It's okay. We'll get you more ice cream.
Okay. I'm Terry and I've been married 15 years now, and it's been a happy marriage. I don't know what to say at this point. It's easy to regress back to the old days. There's a lot of things I remember that go through my head. I've still got a wall at the house that's dedicated to my family, my first life. Deb's pictures up there. I've got pictures of my grandparents up there, the weddings for both my daughters, and it's like my memory wall. And it's my office space. I worked out of the house as a district guy there for a while, and so that was one wall on the house on my office, and it still sits there to this day. And there's times I still glance over and go from picture to picture and look at them, because that is part of my life. That's part of what the good Lord gave me, and He's taken care of me. He took care of me in my workplace. The company was bought out at one point, and I didn't want to go to the next step in the management chain at that company, so I was trying to avoid it, and I was being pushed towards that direction, and we got bought out by another company, and they condensed the management chain, and I ended up losing my position over that, and so I came home that day, and I got the old corporate severance check and that kind of stuff, and good luck, and it's been nice type thing, right? And I had other places I probably could have gone to work or that sort of thing, or maybe I could have gone back and worked something out. But I came home and I was tickled to death. I was tickled to death. It was one of those jobs where you would travel a week out of the month and going to my sites that I took care of. And then one week of the month, we all got together, and it was like a shooting match. You felt like you were the guy up there on the stage, and they're taking pot shots at you. It was upper management type thing. Well, can't we do this? We can do this cheaper. What about that? And you come up with ideas, and it was a regular shooting match. It happened as a monthly affair, right? Did not miss that. Did not miss that. It was gone. I never wanted to go back. I told Terry, I said, we're going to be okay. Once again, I'll fall back on my Navy check, right? So the house is paid for. We're okay. And so I started doing volunteer work after that. And I had friends that were still had houses that were damaged from Katrina, and I'm kind of a jack of all trades type guy. I'm not an expert on anything, and so I was helping people. In one house I was working on, probably did that for about a year, I guess, working on these houses. And I was in this one house, and I remember I was remodeling the kitchen. It was a storm damage type thing. Remodeling the kitchen. There's no power on the house. It was January. It was grand here, just a little bit north of here, and it was cold. I was under the sink trying to hook up pipes. The house was built back in the 40s, so I had cast iron pipes, and I'm trying to put a modern sink in, get the plastic hooked up to the cast iron pipes, and I hit my head on on the bottom of the sink. I thought, I've got a profession. What am I doing here? And so the good Lord has always stepped in about that time, And I ran across a friend I hadn't seen in quite a while, and he said, "Babe, we've got 2 companies working together, and we're down in Corpus Christi, and they've got security issues, security clearances and that sort of thing. And would you be interested in doing some of that? It's more of a general manager type job." And so I prayed over it, and I thought, well, let's go take a look at it. And I said, okay. And so a friend of ours, George, call him Old George, had passed away. So the interview actually happened at his funeral. Wow. So wherever Jesus gives you the opportunity, I know he's there in the room. There's a bunch of us there. So the lady owned the company, and so she said it was a go. So after the funeral, I sat down and got more involved with the company. It was actually a part-time job, and it was hands-on type stuff. And so I made a few trips down to Corpus Christi, that sort of thing. They're great, great people. And but they had some construction stuff they needed done. Well, okay, I'll do that. I'm get me out of my chair, So
I thought you left construction for the job.
It's hard to leave. Everybody needs that done. So they, what happens? They bought the house next door. I took a look at it, and we turned it into an office for them. Is what we did. And so I worked with them, and they tried to get me in down at Dauphine Street, where I was originally working, the Navy Marine Corps Center down there. The Navy had since moved down, and it was strictly Marine Corps. And so she was trying to get me in down there. Of course, we'd get my overhead as a general manager for there. And so that never did pan out. And finally, the contract expired, and that was the end of that position. And so I went back down to the guy that she was trying to get me into. I said, hey, I didn't have any kids, but I made the old joke, the job's gone, but the baby still needs milk. You got anything? And he says, yeah, babe. He says, I've got 2 departments out here. It's Marine Corps, and he's retired lieutenant colonel, nice guy. And he said, I'm having a hard time with it. He's run the facilities department for the Marine Corps. And with that, there's 140 Marine sites around the country that they take care of. And so the networks that needed to go into these places, they're having a hard time coordinating that. And the Marine Corps G6 does that. The 2 departments couldn't talk. They didn't understand each other, and they have to work together. And so I was brought in to do that. And so once again, the good Lord took care of me. I was in my element. I had nobody working for me. It's the first time in 20 years that I didn't have 20 people working for me. It was awesome. You know what it's like to get rid of that?
People like to think that it's good to be the boss, but
No, no, no.
Sometimes it sucks being a
I,
boss.
nope. I'm not looking for responsibility. I'm not looking for accountability. I don't want anybody to work for me. I don't even have a dog anymore.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't paying attention either. No, so that worked out well. I worked there until I retired. So I want to say the good Lord's taken care of me. He's put me where I needed to be. Life has grown. As an example, when I went in and interviewed this guy for a job, one of the first things he did was he took my hands and looked at them. He looked at them. Well, he had a few calluses at that point. I've been doing construction kind of work. He says, "You're hired." He wasn't expecting me to do that kind of stuff, but we had contractors out there building, doing construction on these sites where we had computer room closets, that sort of thing. And the wiring that was in the building needed to be right. People need to be able to understand that and get that done. And I was that person. So I did that for a while. I did that for about 7 years, and it was a good crew. It was a good crew. But as far as going back and grieving over my first loss and losing my first wife, that was tough. There for a long time, I didn't care if I lived or died. I really didn't. I'd have been very happy if I could have gone home to the Lord at that point, because I knew that's where I was going to go. Jesus has always taken care of me. I talk to him daily. I still talk to him daily, whether I'm out working on something on the house or before I came in here. It's like he's my best friend. He's there, and he's been there my whole life. And so before I did this stuff, and as I'm doing this stuff, he's been there. And I didn't really realize how much control he had over me until I was probably in my 40s. And looking backwards, the places that he put me and the opportunities that he gave me. Point in case, as I came out of the Navy, I made out resumes, but I didn't get a single job off a resume. The only time I used my resume was after I got hired, and I was asked for one for the documentation purposes. And so he took care of me, and I give him the glory for that, because he put me where I needed to be. And he left me unemployed for a couple months as a contractor, and that was a weird feeling. I think he was just testing me. Hey, what are you going to do? You going to sit here and lick your wounds, or you going to get up, or I've got you. You know that, And back in those days, I was still with Deb, and I remember she come up and got me out of my chair and said, "Knock it off," because I'd been out of work for about 4 weeks at that point, and there's no answer to resumes and that kind of stuff. She said, "Oh, you're going to be fine," and she was working at the time, and so financially we were okay. It just, I was supposed to be the breadwinner. I was supposed to be the breadwinner, but he put me back in the workforce right after that. He's always been there. He's always been there, and I gladly talk about him now and what he's done for me and how he's carried me. I tell people that it's hard to enjoy the good times if you haven't had some hard times. And if your life's always been good, what do you compare that to? Are you lucky? I say probably not, because you don't know what you got. If you've been down, I've never been to the point of being hungry and from a physical point of view, but I've been hungry as far as companionship. Where am I going to go? Who can I talk to? It seemed like the whole rug got pulled out from underneath me. And that hurt. But I think we're allowed to do that. I think he's always got his hands underneath us, but I think he allows us to do that so we can grow and understand who we are and who he is. And
so it sounds like, just listening, obviously the Lord's got you. Good luck with that ice cream. We'll just get you new stuff afterward. You had a lot to say. That was good. I didn't even have to prompt you or anything. Just kind of that intro, and that was it. But it sounded like your story, There's some helpful things for people to take away. Obviously, the Lord's always with you. He's guiding you, He's directing you. Even when you feel like you're alone, you're not alone. And even when you lose someone you think might be your best friend and may have actually been, there's an even better friend, another best friend, Jesus, right? You talked about, the things you talked about just, I think, really help people hopefully go, it's okay to feel miserable. It's actually supposed to hurt.
It is.
And, Jesus weeps at the tomb of his friend Lazarus. Shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept, John 11:35, I believe. And he's about to raise the guy from the dead, and he's still there crying. Yeah. So there's something about death that's supposed to hurt. And then just seeing how it affects everything, it makes me think more about those that I know that have lost people and wanting to be more present for them. Or, it seems like that's what Terry was for you initially. She was just somebody that God put there. Why are you walking right when she needs somebody to help her get something out of her car? We do need people. We need companionship. And, 2 a.m. being awfully lonely, right? That's your former father-in-law, right?
It was.
It's, we need people. It's not good for the man to be alone, as God said in the beginning, right? But what, if somebody's listening right now and they are experiencing grief, what advice do you give them? Sunday, I guess, when we talked about this, you mentioned something like talking to a particular person about their own grief, and you're kind of saying to me, don't, like, for the first year, don't even think about making some of these decisions. Don't even think about getting rid of their stuff. Don't even think about all these other things. What kind of stuff would you say to people that have lost someone recently or are still kind of dealing with some of the grief?
I would say don't do anything for a year. And that's an arbitrary number, obviously. Don't put their stuff away. Don't try and forget them. Don't get locked into everything should be a certain way. I say a year because it's a handy number. I don't know if I took that long or I took a little longer. I slowly started putting Deb's stuff away and my kids' stuff away, after that period. But there was no hurry to do that because I missed them. I could still see them walking around.
You still got them. I mean, you mentioned this memory wall, right? I mean,
I do.
There's still a place for them in your life.
They're not gone.
Yeah.
And I still think about them. Obviously, Terry's the biggest part of my life now, and God bless her. I mean, she's been wonderful for me, just wonderful. But she also allows me to have my time. She knew Deb. I come to find out she knew Deb, and she knew my kids, and I was the only one in the family that didn't know her. And so she kind of knew where I came from, and so she gave me the room that I needed. And like that time where I just shut her out for that, we're done, I don't want to talk to anybody. She gave me that space, and I don't know what made her think on Valentine's Day that was a good time to throw a card in my face or say, hey, I'm still alive, don't forget about me, because I'd pretty well shut the world out at that point. And so I'm glad she did. But you'll know when it's time to start putting things up, putting them to one side. When I first met Terry, I didn't look at her as a replacement for Deb. I wasn't looking for that. I didn't think there was such a thing. And but to have somebody to talk to every now and then, it just, it was handy. And I guess we slowly started working together. And and if you're in grief, I think that will happen to you also. Don't feel like it's the end of the world. I know you'll feel like that, but it doesn't go on forever. Get yourself up and get yourself out. The right time to do that, you'll know. Because my first little bit after that happened, I was by myself in my house for quite a while. I mean, the church come by and check on me now and then, and neighbors would come in every now and then and check on me and that kind of stuff. But it didn't seem like a long time now. It doesn't seem like a long time now, but at the time it seemed like eternity because I couldn't see things getting better the next day, But I kept praying on it. I slowly started getting out. I started trying to go to church again, and that particular it didn't work out in that group of people. And that's not to say anything bad about them. It just I was a married couple with them.
Well, and I did something, I don't know, a couple of months ago, guilt by association. People have had bad experiences in church, and because of that, that's sort of why they don't want to be in church. But I think it's what you're describing is sort of the same thing. It's not the church's fault in this case, but you have there's this association, right? And so for you to be there, just like you talked about the house, you had to move, right? You had to get out of the house because there's all these associations with that place, and the smells, the view, the images, everything, right? Like you can't miss all of the memories that are connected to that, and you just kind of have to move on a little bit sometimes. So maybe avoiding some of them, right? But also finding ways to keep them alive in your life, in your heart, right? It seems like a dance, some kind, like a.
It is, and I've got to tell you, my old house, I drive by it every day.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing. And what I look for in the backyard, I planted an oak tree years ago. It's huge now. It's huge. It's a 30-year-old oak tree now.
Wow.
And it covers the backyard plus the neighbor's backyard.
Wow.
And the house is obviously I sold it. I don't know if they've resold it since then or not. I don't see a lot of activity there, but it's kept, and it's on my way home in and out of where I live. And so most of it's just, I smile when I go past the house. It's become a good thing instead of a sad thing. I'm glad I had the period of time I did with Deb. The Lord led me through that. I'm glad I had my kids, and I'll be a normal dad and say I wish they lived closer to home, but they did to me what I did to my dad, right? He's out in San Diego. It's where I was born and raised, and it wasn't his fault that I moved back to Louisiana. The Navy put me here, but I also never went back home. And he came out once or twice. He came out for my Navy retirement ceremony, and I was really happy to see him for that. But he wasn't a big traveler. He had luggage himself, and I guess that's what kind of helped me looking back on him too. He's an ex-POW for World War II, so he had a lot of luggage he carried around with him. And I guess that'd be a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
But I did to him by leaving him behind and dragging his grandkids off what my kids did to me. Yeah. So maybe there's justice in the world somewhere. Somebody's laughing. I don't know.
Maybe.
And I hope my grandkids don't do it to my kids. And
but I think just this whole conversation here. I was thinking about your wife Deb, but here you've got Deb, you've got your mom, your dad, your kids moving away, your first wife's dad, you've got your dad and and his whole experience, the POW experience. There's so much grief everywhere, right? I mean, we've all got grief. We've all got these painful experiences, and it just seems like this is a good time of year to try to remind people to be kind.
It is. It is.
You know, you never know what's going to set someone off in one way or another, you know, down a dark hole maybe. And some people are trying to shut you out, and some people are looking for somebody, right? This list I printed out before we sat down here, I think provides some perspective. I'd shared it on Facebook earlier, and it says grieving during the holidays can look like, and it's like everything. Like there's no theme here. The theme is there is no theme. The theme is you don't know what you want. You don't know what will help. Right? It's so grieving during the holidays can look like not wanting to celebrate, needing someone else to do all the work, needing to do all the work, struggling to do anything at all, staying busy with projects so that you don't have to think or feel, thinking and feeling anyway, suddenly crying at random moments, missing them so much that your heart hurts, wanting to talk about them, not wanting to talk about them, aching for their voice or smell or presence, wanting the holidays to be over already, grateful for the normalcy of holiday traditions, going through the motions, struggling to stay present for others who are still here, a big confusing mixture of all of the above. And that sums it all up, right? So you don't know what you want. You don't know how to get out. But in your case, if you know the one who's seen and experienced more grief than any of us have, because he's hurting with us.
Yes.
He knows the pain.
He puts up with us, doesn't he? I mean, you know, we ask him for forgiveness, and he says,
He puts
"Okay,
up with
come
us.
on."
Yeah.
The door is open.
He puts up with us, and he put himself through far worse
Yes.
than just putting up with us to save us, and to provide a way through the grief that is, you know, like you've talked about, right? I mean, I know where I'm going. I know where that I'm going to see him. I know this is not the end, right? That there is life after this.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
There is more than what we see and more than what we're experiencing. And even if you know that, though, I think that's another point maybe here. Even if you know that, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, or that suddenly you just smile and walk around like, oh, well, it's okay. I know where they are and I know where I'm going, and so I'm not going to be sad. I mean, your story, a man of faith who went into some dark places, right? So it's not like just knowing Jesus makes it go away. It just it sounds like it's more helps you navigate it in a way and come out the other side and bear that burden.
Well, that, and once you've seen the dark side, it makes the nice side, the top side, the upside, so much better. That's why you see Bay smiling as much as he does. Life is good. I mean, we're all sinners. We know that. I'm been forgiven for that, and I'm tickled to death, you know. And so there's an upside to it, and that's why I smile. That's why I feel good, and I hope this goes on for many years. You know, at some point he's going to take me home. You know, and I hope it's in the sleep. You know, but
I think most people prefer.
Yeah, I don't know. I tell people I just want to live one day longer than Terry, so I can take care of her, and I'm ready to go home after that. And I thought that about my first wife too, but he made me stick around a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
And I want to take care of those that I'm responsible for. And but he's got a way forward. I'm tickled to death. I'm happy in that. I enjoy the joy of the Lord. You know, once you've seen some of the uncomfortable and miserable parts of it, it really makes the good parts feel good, feel real good.
Nice. Yeah. Well, if you're going through something right now, if you're struggling, if you feel like there isn't something on the other side, you know, here's Bay Ames telling you there is. Jesus died. Jesus rose. There's hope on the other side of Good Friday. There's hope on the other side of grief. And hopefully this has been helpful, hearing just another person talk about their own experience. And, if you've got stories, if you've got comments, if you've got anything to add, to clarify, to share, I kind of feel like everybody's journey through grief is a little bit different. And I think there are a lot of similarities, though. So hopefully this has been helpful. But if you've got something to add to the conversation, please do so. Make sure you like and share and subscribe and all those wonderful things. And maybe we'll get Babe back in here again to talk some more. But we'll have him eat the ice cream first.
It's going to cost you more ice cream.
Because he's got a bowl of soup, and we have got to get this man some ice cream for coming in here and putting up with me for the last hour.
Oh, no, you've been a pleasure. You're a pleasure.
All right, y'all. Hey, taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet. Jesus is sweeter, and he's sweeter because, you get a bowl of ice cream when you're feeling miserable, but Jesus gets you through some pretty serious stuff way better than ice cream does. So looking forward to what he has in store on the other side of all the misery that we've got going on in this world. Great to be with you. Catch up with you real soon. Later. Bye-bye.